Test, test, test. Test, test, test. Test, test, test. Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started here soon-ish. Suppose I could have some music playing for all of you. There we go. Well, 3 minutes of guitar while we wait. Okay, we'll launch into this then. Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Goins. I am the trainer for the WiscWeb team, and this is the training for the basics of the events calendar, using the events calendar plugin, creating events, making those events visible for your audience to see, and then just some other little tidbits about what you can do with those events after you have created them for your site. Just a quick reminder that, or a couple of reminders, that first and foremost, plugins are not turned on automatically for sites. So if you don't have an events calendar available to you, so if you don't see the events option over here on the left, there's one of two things that you need to be aware of. The first is events calendar active, and you can request it by going to the customer support form and then in there choosing a plugin activation request, and then in that drop down choose the plugin that you want to be activated, which of course would be Events Calendar. We would then activate it for you, and then hopefully you would see the events over here on the left side. The other thing to be aware of is the Events Calendar plugin might be active on your site. However, you have to be an administrator of your site to be able to actually see any of the plugins. So Events Calendar, Gravity Forms, WP Data Tables, you have to have the administrator role to be able to see these. So just be aware that we get a lot of requests to have Events Calendar turned on, and it turns out that the site actually has it already turned on for them, except the person doesn't have the right role to see it. So we just have to change their role so that they actually have access to it, and then everything is fine there. So what is the Events Calendar? The Events Calendar is a plugin that we use that helps you create events for your site, and then allows you to display those events in several different views. And we'll get into those different views as we go throughout this next hour or 90 minutes or so. But essentially you are creating these events to have them show up in a calendar. Those events can be single events or they can be recurring events. And we'll talk a little bit about all the various things that you do as you are building out your events. So to start with, I'm going to head into my training sites dashboard. To access your events, you just simply click on events over here on the left. Your full list of events would appear in here. As you start to build out more and more events, this thing will start to get pretty full. So depending upon how many you use, it might get a little overwhelming. Just to give you an idea, I'll show you the WiscWeb events list. And so you can see I'm up to 555 items total. And I am the heaviest user of the events calendar. I'd probably say I'd probably give our whole service a run for I use it the most. Mainly because I use our events calendar events to track all of my upcoming trainings and all of my upcoming open labs. So I use the events calendar quite a bit. And it's pretty basic the way that I use it, but I do use it quite a bit for my events. So to create a new event, you would click Add New. Sorry, I just got a message, so I have to respond to it through Teams quick. Da, 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 da. Oh, this life. I am training this morning. Okay, back at it. So here is your, everything in WordPress kind of follows the same format when you are starting to build out your different areas of content. So, this is going to look very similar to what you have seen in the past for, page creation, post creation, things of that nature. So, the event title, obviously it would get that. You have your text area down here, and it's just the text area. So let's really quick just grab some lorem ipsum, and we'll dump that into there. And so, you have all of your various things. It bugged out for some reason in there. There we go. You can add media. So I can put in this chair. Keep it medium. None. Left. Post. So you can do those kind of things. So all of this stuff is you should hopefully be very comfortable with this aspect of it. This is just your general content creation. So down below, this is where the actual events calendar plugin kicks in. This is where you add in all the various information about when the event, where the event is, when the event is, where the event is, things of that nature. So first thing is start and end time. So I'll say it's tomorrow, 9 a.m. until, let's go, 11 a.m. I could make it be an all-day event if I wanted to. So we'll get into the event series in a second here. So the venue. So the venue is the location, obviously, but as you are building out these events and as you are creating venues, this list, so as you can see here, will start to populate with venues that you have created. So let's just say Matt's home office, since we're all working from home right now. So we'll call this 123 4th Street, Madison. Select a country, United States. So you just enter in all this information. Trying to think off the top of my head. Here's my postal code, phone number 608 555. And if I had a website, or if the venue, I should say, had a website, you do have the options to show map. You don't want to use that. And show map link. You could link out to this location and it would link it to a Google Maps link. The reason why you don't want to use show map is a couple of years ago now, and some of you may remember this, we've had this conversation in the past, Google changed the way that their code works, their API works when making calls to Google Maps. And it became a monetized function on their end rather than just a simple web call. And essentially, they set it up so that you cannot simply show a map if you make an API call to their site through various plugins or through various software. WordPress and the Events Calendar plugin is one of those softwares that was affected by this. So this won't work as you expect it to. This, however, would. You could link out to the map if you so desire. So that's how you set up the location. Down below there you have the organizer, and obviously you can create a new organizer if you want to. So I could start to type in So I could create that particular organizer, and that particular organizer will get added to that drop-down list. If the event itself has a website, so if you're setting up an event for an upcoming conference, an upcoming I don't know, course, something of that nature, you could put in an event website if you so desire. I'll come back around to this because there's something that I use within the WiscWeb events that some of you may have already experienced before, but for now we'll go with that. If the event had a cost, you could put that information in here as well. We don't actually do any sort of e-commerce through WiscWeb, so this would just be informational purposes rather than anything else. And then down below, there is the excerpt field. And so the excerpt field I just want to touch on really briefly because I want you to be aware of it. How the excerpt field works is when you create an event and you're looking at your default events calendar page, this events page, when someone mouses over an event here, it shows this bit of text, and I'm pointing at my monitor like anybody out there can see it. But anyways, you can see that bit of text there where it says this course will teach content, etc. That summary, that brief preview, is being pulled from this field right here, your actual content field. However, if you don't want this to be what people see when they mouse over it, you could instead edit the excerpt. And again, it's just more of a summarization. So, and that's that. Some other things down below, discussion stuff, you don't have to worry about that. The author of this particular post, I don't really usually worry about that as well, because that doesn't show up on the page itself. So, I have my event created. I have content here, the date and time, the location, the organizer. So I will publish it. And then once it's published, I will click on View Event. And this is what the event will end up looking like. So here is all of that information that I put in up there. The image doesn't quite work with the text lineup. Maybe I should move it over to the right side. Here is the information, the details of it. So the date, when, and the website, the where, and the who. So you can kind of see how this thing builds out. There are a couple of export options here. Events calendar, the way that we have events calendar set up, we can't read in events from these types of things, but you can export events to these types of things. So just be aware of how that works. So the event looks good. I will go back in and I will edit the event. So one of the things that I tend to do as well from my workflow is when I create an event, a lot of times I do open labs and my beginners training. They're always the same information. It's always the same content. It's just different days. So if I know that I'm going to have an event that's going to happen on another day, same content. Sorry, my working from home, fun things. My cat is jumping into my windows, so it distracted me. So I will use a lot of the same content, but I will obviously have a different date and time. What you can do is once you've published it, you can click duplicate this. And for those of you who aren't familiar with what the duplicate this option is, we have a plugin called Duplicate Page. And what it does is it allows you to duplicate something that you have created, and it saves it as an identical draft of that item that you were working on previously. So now what I can do is I can go in and edit that draft. And there are first a couple of things. First is it's a different event. So I will call it my second sample event. Also notice right here the URL, the permalink value. I should change that as well because it's technically not the same event. So notice the format of the permalinks, lowercase and hyphens instead of spaces. Please be aware of that. This is very important when it comes to search engine optimization and just good file management practice. So now I have updated that. It's going to be the same information, but maybe now I'm going to change that over to the right side so that it looks a little bit better with the text on the page. And then going down below, You know what? This one actually is going to occur. Let's go next Friday. Same time. I'm just going to make it be next Friday. Same location, same organizer, same everything else. Publish. And so now I have 2 events created. So let's talk a little bit about what you can do for some of those recurring events that you might have going on. So, you might have, let's say, so for us, we have a weekly check-in with our team. We actually have a daily check-in, but I don't want to overwhelm my events calendar just yet with that stuff. So what I can do is I can click Add New, and we can give it a title. All right. So we'll say our team check-ins will happen on Wednesdays, and let's say that we're going to schedule multiple events. So this is going to be now an event series. It's going to be weekly. It's every Wednesday at the same time. Oop, I should change that to 9 a.m. so it's not an all-day meeting. Same time, 8 a.m. And I can end the series on, after, or never. So let's say I want to end it in 2023 on April 5th. So now I will have 3 years worth of recurring events for that. I could add some more events in there if I wanted to, if I wanted to put this on different days, perhaps. You can also add exclusions. So I could say once on, let's see, did it in the middle of the week, which isn't the best because usually nothing's happening during the middle of the week. But we'll say July 1st. It won't happen on July 1st. And it won't happen on July 1st or July 7th of 2021. So, I made those 2 exclusions. I can give a description to this recurrence if I wanted to. I could change the excerpt if I wanted to, but this is pretty short, and this pretty much is what this value is. So now I have created that recurring event, and I can click Publish. So now you'll see it's going to give you this little message right here, and it's just a process bar basically that's walking you through the fact that it's creating now 3 years worth of events instead of just 1 or 2 events that you have done. So it's going to process that through, but it is published. It's out there to see. Okay, so now we have created 2 individual events, and we have created a whole slew of recurring events. Now, the events themselves live in your events calendar plugin area, all in here. Where do they appear out on your site? And so now what you need to be aware of is some of the default nature and some of the customization nature that you have the ability to do with events calendar. So the first thing to be aware of is events calendar by default will use a page that you create as its default landing spot for the events. And that events page is just simply called events. So if you wanted to have a default page like this that you could link this to, you would have to create a page called events and publish it. I don't have to do anything else. I'm just going to publish this. And now the events page has been published. And now what I can do is click view page. And you'll see this is now consumed by default by the events calendar plugin. And now you can kind of see some of the setup. So if we look out to April, you'll notice there's that second event I created. And if you look at the mouse over, now remember, I changed that that excerpt on this particular page to be this thing, but I left this one alone. And so you'll kind of see how that formatting happens and how that automatic consumption happens there for that particular event. And then again, you just click on the event and there she blows. So that's that. You know, this is this bar up here. You can use this on your pages to change views if you so desire. So if I wanted to view a week, this I tend to find is not very good. And this is an events calendar thing. I don't really know why it does it this way. But then we can go day. And this is a nice view here. And there's that one right there. So, and then location, things like that. People can use this to view events on your site. All right, so we have created some events, and we've talked about what you can do to just default display those events on a page. So now let's talk a little bit about some of the options you have for displaying events in different ways in different locations. So what I'm going to start to talk about is some of the shortcode values that you can use. So to get some more information about this, you can go out to our knowledge base document, and it's KBDoc 69929, and that will be the document that has just a little introduction to it. But quite frankly, because, and similar to what I said when I did the Gravity Forms training earlier this week, we can't keep up with the changes that happen from our own documentation standpoint. So we would link you out to the vendor documentation for that, because it's it's on them to make sure that it is updated. And you can see this was last updated on March 25th, so just yesterday. Okay, so here you'll see the various shortcodes that you can use. So we'll kind of start to tinker around with some of these shortcodes and show you what some of the options are and what you could potentially do with them. So I'm going to head back over to my dashboard area. I'm going to go to pages. I will create a new page, and I will just call it calendar testing. Thank you. Okay. Scroll on down. And then in here, this is where I'm going to start to put in some of those shortcode values. So I'm going to start with this one right here. So you can, these are all jump links. So I'm going to go down to here and just grab this first one. Now, copying and pasting, remember, and for those of you who went through the beginners trainings with me, I really do hit on this pretty pointedly. Copying and pasting from external sources is something you don't want to do and just throw things in. Because if I just paste this in, a lot of times what will happen is a lot of code behind the scenes will come in as well. And so I clicked over to my text tab right here, and what you'll see is it actually is pre-formatting this based on some code that existed over here on this page. So you don't want to do this because this actually won't work now because of the way that it's doing this pre-formatted, these pre-formatted tags. So instead, what you can do is over in Visual, you do the paste as text, and now what happens is it does not paste in all of that additional code in there. It just pulls in what I wanted it to, which was this thing right here. Okay, so this is our first short code right here. I'm just going to go ahead and publish this page because we're going to bounce back and forth between these two as we go. So I'm just going to open this up in a new tab. And this is the first view. Here is the mini calendar. And so you can see if you look out, here's the 27th. This is our first date. If we go out to the 1st, it will show me all the events that happen on that day. If I click on the 3rd, here's the events that happen on that day. So this is, again, just another thing. I've seen some groups where they will they'll use the mini cal up in the in a 2-column 60/40, and then the 40 side they will put this mini cal in with just like a little rundown in here. And those are for groups that use they'll use a lot of events, so they'll have things going on each day. They'll do that kind of thing over there. So we'll get into the category stuff in a little bit here. You can, the count equals thing, that's something that I'll show you in a second here, because basically what the count equals is it allows you to limit what you see. So for example, on my training page, this is set to, I think I have it bumped up at the moment, but usually I set this at 5. So this is only 5 as well. But sometimes you can bump this up to 10. You can bump it down to 3 if you want to. If you have a lot of events coming up and you don't want to show, X number of events, you can use the count equals value to limit what you see on there. So that's the mini cal. The one that I use the most is this one right here, tribe events list. So same ideas. I'm going to grab this, edit this page, collapse U, bring it in a text block. Again, paste as text because I do not want that extra stuff in there. Update. Wait for it to refresh. And then I will refresh my page there. And so now you'll see it defaults to, I think it's 10. Yep, the default is 10 for the list, and then view more, that would take you out to the events page and to the actual calendar page itself. But this is what that events list is, and this is what I use most often. That's what you see on my pages when you look at our upcoming events for the WiscWeb team. So that's what this one is right here. So now what we can do is we can start to look at some of those values. So limit equals 10. 10 is the default. So maybe I want to change this to limit equals 3. And notice the formatting of this. Parameter equals quotes. And we'll update it. We'll bounce over here. And there you go. There is that limit value put into there. Okay. Back over to here. Let's see. Let's see. So we have a phone equals yes, address equals yes, organizer. So let's try some of these. So if I go down here and we'll say organizer equals yes. So I didn't put an organizer in for the team check-in, but my 2 sample events, I did put in those that information. And so you'll notice that the links go to the person's page, and also it puts out their phone number. So something to be aware of now that you're seeing that, maybe you don't want to be putting some of this information in about a particular user. But if I click on my page, it will show my information. This is basically like my organizer page. It would show my information, and it would show events coming up that I am the organizer of. So that's something to think about there. Again, we'll get into the category here in a second because I want to introduce that to you. So, gosh, just going down the line here. This week, I do like the tribe this week. I think some people do use this. This is basically just a weekly view of your upcoming events. So if I go to next week, you can see those. So there's that. Oops, Dazers, get back here. Okay. So those are just some of the views that you can use with this week. I'm sorry, with the short code. I'm gonna go look at a couple more because we actually have two plugins for the events calendar. We have the Events Calendar Pro, which is what these short codes refer to, and then we also have the Events Calendar. Weirdly, both of those plugins we use for just for most function of us having an events calendar aspect to our service, but they also both have different short codes that can be used in different places, but they don't actually work together. So it's really weird, but I will kind of show you what some of those differences are here in a little bit there. So let's head back into the events themselves, and let's start to talk a little bit about some of the other things that you might want to take a look at as you are tinkering around with your events. So first things first, under events you do have settings, and in settings there are a number of things that you can take a look at. So the default, there's that 10 default, just some different options in here that you might want to take a look at. Honestly, I would really recommend leaving most of these things alone, aside from a couple of things. So if you wanted to change the default events, if I scroll on down here, I want to turn off the Google Maps function and save those changes. The display, you can that drop down that you have here, you can change what things are available in the settings there. The default view, you could change what the default view is of your events page. So you could say I only want my default events to be the week, but that's a choice again on your end. Yeah. I'll get into this in a little bit because this actually was a question that came up from somebody due to the COVID-19 stuff, and I'll get into this in at the end. Yeah, most of this other stuff I would just kind of leave as is. But again, you can take a look at your settings, use with caution, because some of these things might not work as you anticipate. Okay. So back up to events. Let's start to talk about some of the other things that are available. So I'll add a new event. Actually, no, let's go back out and let's do the team check-in one. So let's edit the team check-in. I'm going to edit the first one. So you can sort by these. I want to actually edit the first one. So I'm going to go over here. And a couple of things to be aware of over on the right side are some of the options that you can apply to these. So some of the event options are you could hide an event from your event listing. So say you want to create an event and you want to share it with some people, but you don't want a broader audience to be able to see this event that you've created. So you can hide it from there. Sticky in the month view. This is if you wanted an event to always appear first in this month view. So if you know you were going to have 4 events on a Friday, but honestly there's one that needs to be the first one, you might want to sticky that one just to make it be first. And then the featured events are highlighted. So they will have something that makes them stand out in the crowd. And I'll just add those. So you can see it when you do feature event, it automatically adds it to sticky as well because it assumes that it wants it to be a prime event because it's a feature event. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then up here is the categories. So again, for those of you who have gone through the beginner's training, I touch on this with when we're talking about creating posts, but you can use categories to differentiate and potentially silo where you are putting particular pieces of content. So in this case, I'm going to create some event categories because I want particular events to display on particular pages. So obviously I have created a team check-in. So maybe I want to create a team category. And I will add that new event category. And oops, sorry, it keeps scrolling on me. And it automatically checked it when I created it. So now I have a team value right there. So now I've changed the options and I've added a category. So now I'm going to update. And it's updating for all of them. And let's go back to, let's go to our events page. And let's go to April. And now you'll see, first off, here is that sticky and featured event thing. Now, I don't have any other events on these pages or on these days, so that aspect doesn't really show up. But basically, this would be the first thing up here. And there we go. I'm trying to see if anything else stands out when you're on the check-in or on the event page. Nope. So you can see it standing out a little bit there. So we have this this setup, but now let's take a look at what we can do with the category aspect of it. So now if I go back down to pages and calendar testing page, all of my various options in here. But now I'm going to take a look at this tribe events list and we'll limit it to 5. I'm going to take off the organizer. But now what I can do is I can use the I want to make sure I get the right there you go. The category equals, and then as you can see in quotes, the category value. Notice lowercase and hyphens. Hyphens often are used instead of the spaces here as well, so just be aware of that when you're creating your categories. So I'm going to grab category equals, paste this text, category equals team. And now we'll update it. View the page. And there they are. The 5 coming up that are just set to the team category. So, again, to give you example, down here at the bottom, all of our events show up. But when you go to my training page, I have them siloed in different locations based on the category, essentially to help you as my audience know where to look to see the things that are coming up for each one. So left side are all of the upcoming training classes. Right side is all of the upcoming open labs, which I'm going to have to, change there. So you can kind of play around with that as well. I guess just a couple of other things if you wanted to tinker around with. Notice that this is in a text block, so I could say upcoming team check-in events, and I could give it heading 3, make it underlined. I don't know if the underline will show up because of that. Update it. So there you go. And so you can add in some other text around it, and then the short code would use the what it's pulling from, which is the events calendar stuff that you're creating internally there. So that's how you use those short codes to do the categories. Again, I do that quite a bit. Let's take a look out here, see if there's anything else. You can do a featured venue if you wanted to. So let's see. Trying to think of how best to do this. Let's do. Let me look at what the thing is. Featured venue slug equals the White House. So I'm going to go to my events quick. Go to my venues. Go into the home office one. This is the slug right here. So if I wanted to, I could grab that. And go back up to, come back down to the pages since I'm going to be setting this up. Collapse, add a new content layout. Make sure that's the right format. Try featured venue. I did not do it right. So let me grab that. Try featured venue, slug equals the location. Okay. See, folks, we all learn together. So here's the actual venue itself. And then here are the 2 events that are coming up for that particular venue. I don't like the way that formats. I would probably not use this just because I don't like the way that shows up. But something to think about if you want to use something of that nature with this. All right. Brief pause. Does anyone have any questions? If you are watching along, I'll take a brief drink break quick. Okay. Um, so, in essence, the the process is pretty straightforward. You create your events. You have an events page. You either have one already or you create one. You would then figure out how you want to add it into your navigation structure up there. And then you start to decide on how do you want to best um, use those events that you are creating, either through categories, through slugs, through anything else like that. So, a couple of other things to just touch on really briefly. And the first is I wanted to talk about one of the things, because this might be relevant to you now, obviously, and that is the fact that you can have a message appear at the top of your um, events calendar there. So this actually is a result of somebody emailing in to me and saying, we wanted to post something on all of our upcoming events. They didn't want to have to go through one by one and put this information into each event. Um, they would rather, is there a way to do something globally? And so I poked it. I took a look at it, and essentially what I did was, oops, I'll touch on that in a second. Using Google Analytics streamed, so you can see it not only appears on the events calendar page, but it also appears on each event itself. And so how I did that was, I went out to the events, and I went under settings, and then in display, at the very bottom of display, there are these two options right here, which is add HTML before event content and add HTML after event content. And so essentially it's just a text editor. It says HTML, but it's a text editor. So basically you could say, important update. Um, all in-person events are canceled due to campus's response to COVID-19. Read more here. Link. And then I can bold that. Can hit enter there. And so then this checkbox right here actually, this just shows on the events page. This is something that you can have it show on events that are being displayed via shortcode as well. So, on these types of events. So if I update this, and then we first check here, there's that important update right there. And then if I go into a particular event, there's that important update right there as well. So that's just something that I stumbled across with using, or with that question and trying to figure that out. And then I ended up using it myself for doing this. Now, obviously, I made mine a little bit more elaborate, and this is just me using HTML and CSS code to do this type of thing. I can do this because I am a global admin, Most sites aren't going to have the ability to do HTML and CSS style coding in there. So that's why I showed you it from this standpoint right here. You could, I wonder if you could, since H3 is technically, you could, if you clicked on text, that's how you can get to the code area. Suppose you could do H's. So you see that right there. So that made it stand out a little bit more. Although I would probably flip the H values there. My strong is overwrite, or the bold is overwriting the H value right there, the heading value right there. So, anyways, this is something that if you're interested in doing that, let's chat after the fact. We can always talk about those things later on. So the other thing I wanted to do was I have to go look at my notes real quick just to grab the other short codes. Copy. Okay. So here is the other one, the other tribe events function. And like I said, they do have different short codes that could be used. So you could try. One of the things is the tribe events one, the tribe underscore events value, does allow you to display views based on particular dates. I haven't tinkered with this too much myself, but if you were interested in giving this a shot, I'd be interested to hear how it works for you, or if it works for you. I'm just reading here just to see if there's something that stands out to me. Nah. I don't think aside from aside from this function right here, the ability to use the dates in some of these views, I don't know that I would really care much about any of these other things. This might be the only thing that I would actually find useful, and you may find useful there. So the last one that I do want to show you before we break is this one here, because this one actually I think is somewhat interesting, and I need to put this one into the knowledge base document. But this is how you can actually show a single event in your page instead of using multiple events. So I'll kind of walk through this, and then we'll we'll kind of chat about some of the other things there. So this is the one that I would use, this tribe event inline with the title linked there. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to go back to my pages. Let's go back into calendar testing. And I'm going to add a new layout, plus sign there, one column. Text block. Paste this text. And there it is. So the first thing that you have to be aware of is this ID value right here. So the way that this particular event link works is you can't specify it based on a name or a category. You have to actually specify it based on the individual event ID. And so how you find this event ID value is you would go to your events. Oops. You would hover over the particular event that you want to see. So I'm going to just reorder this and just get let's do my second sample event. And so what you'll see is down at the very bottom, like in the bottom part of the browser window, you should see as I'm hovering over this, that https://train WiscWeb, etc. post equals, and then that number that appears after the post equals, that is the ID of this particular event. I think I can also grab it by clicking on the URL, and yep, it does appear up here. So I can grab it here as well. But this is the ID value. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back on over to my pages, back into calendar testing, into that particular event, and paste in that particular value. So now I have the ID. I will click update. And then because I don't have this as a part of my navigation, I'll have to just close it, reopen it, and there it is. It's linked. Now, obviously, this isn't very exciting because it's just linking to that particular event. But if you'll see, you can start to really add in some of that stuff. So now, I will go back into here. I will paste this text, 3194. 3194, just to remember that. Now the event doesn't have a thumbnail, but I will show you about that. It does have a start time. It does have an exit. So now I will click update. And now it's a little more styled. Yep. I could really get, let's see if I can do this. Nope. Let's see if this works. I'm going to try and bold that. Learning while we do. Yep. So I was able to bold that. Like time, I could bold that. I wonder if there are other things in there that you could too. Oh, yep. So if you look down below, there are a lot of parameters that you could use with this tribe event inline with some of these things. So I would take a look at some of these things to see if there was something that I would want to do. Just to really quick show you the thumbnail value. Make sure this is saved. I'll go back up to events and go into that particular event. Second sample event. That event image is coming from here, so I could set featured image and choose an image. Update. So now I have set a featured image for it. So now if I do this, there is the event image right there. So when I started looking at this, I actually thought this was pretty neat. This ability to do this kind of thing. The problem that I find with this, however, is the fact that when you go to that event, this is also there. This may not be what you want there, so I just want to make sure I point that out to you, is that when you set a featured image for posts for an event, the featured image automatically appears at the top of the page or at the top of that particular event. So just be aware of that. Just be aware of the fact that that's going to appear there. But I don't know. When I started looking at this, I thought, oh, this is pretty neat because this would allow you to create, um, maybe on a page that you update on, I don't know, a weekly basis, maybe a monthly basis. You might want to highlight an event that's coming up that month. And so you just go grab the ID and you kind of put in some of this stuff that I'm kind of tinkering with right here, and you just throw it over into a text block, and it just kind of hangs out there. And it's a nice way to add um, some interesting stuff to your site. Okay, I'm trying to think. What else did I say that I wanted to show you? Oh, one last thing in regards to the events themselves. Let's go to training. One of the things you'll notice with, so for example, my training using the UW theme, I create these events, the actual registration for these types of events. I create those over at the OHRD's site, or the OHR's I can't remember what they call it now. Their training area, but it's their registration area. So when you click on that link, it actually automatically goes to the URL that I put in for that particular event, and that's just using a plugin that we have. I think it's just like Events Calendar URL redirect or something like that. Please hold. The plugins page takes a while to load. So while we're waiting for this, if you have any questions, please ask them over in the chat area. So scrolling on down, it's this one right here. The events calendar extension link events to website URLs. So if you're interested in that, let me know, and I can turn it on for you. I find it useful because all of my registration is done through the OHR site, so it just makes it easier for you to click on it and go right there. It might not make sense for you. That's up to you. But that's really about it. Unless some questions come in, I guess we can call it there. As always, you can reach out to me through Teams. You can just load into Microsoft Teams and search for me. My email address is matt.goins@wisc.edu, GOINS. So you can just send me an email that way as well and ask any questions that you might have. We can set up a little bit of a chat and we can go from there. So if that's that, I'm going to go ahead and mute and hang on for a second or two to see if any questions come in. But otherwise, that's it for the training. Thank you for watching and listening in. And again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch with me. Take care.